This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I have to ask you a few questions before I get into the meat of what I think you want to talk about, because right now we've been diverted from our general study on outsourcing to deal with Mckinsey. We've had many, many meetings on Mckinsey because there's been an effort by some to try to claim that the contracts with Mckinsey were somehow untoward, and that there was political interference involved, and that they were given to friends of the government. So, Ms. Wenger, do you have any specific knowledge related to any political interference related to contracts given to Mckinsey?
That's not something that I would be made aware of in my role.
So you have no reason to doubt the audit report that came out that said that there was no political interference related to the contracts?
Again, that's not anything that I would be brought into, so that's outside of my scope.
And I totally understand, but these are hearings about Mckinsey, so that's why I have to ask you these questions. You can feel free to say you don't have the information. With respect to the contracts with respect to Mckinsey, I understand, and in fact, I sympathize very much with your views related to cleaners, because that would be a core function that employees would normally be called upon to perform. The contracts with McKinsey were, for example, for benchmarking services, which is not a core function of the Department of Defense. Would you agree that there's a difference when the Department of Defense is dealing with something that would be outside of the core function of employees and outsourcing, and there's a difference between cleaning services and benchmarking services?
I would say that there's a difference between cleaning and benchmarking services. I think most people would agree with that. However, I would say that benchmarking services is something that the membership could provide. These are members that have worked at National Defense for some well over 30 years, that have seen people come and go, and they've seen all the new plans come and go. They've seen the leadership turn around, and yet we still see the exact same thing with our work. We are quite familiar with what the challenges are with our work and what paths need to be taken. So I think that we do have a lot to offer with the benchmarking, and with proper consultation, I think that a lot more could be done. But frankly, between you and, well, I can't say between you and I, but frankly, it's more an issue of actually listening and actioning, and not just sitting and looking for the narrative that you want to have heard, and then proceeding with that. And that's part of the challenge that we have at National Defense. It's steeped in tradition, and they like to protect it and maintain it.
I understand. I think that, again, dialogue on both sides is always very important. I think you have to hear one another. And I think that in this case, for example, I understand what you're saying, but benchmarking also involves looking at what is happening outside of Canada, looking at foreign practices that might be best practices that are similar. Would department officials have that expertise?
Certainly, we would have a great deal of expertise in that, where we do collaborate with other militaries on a regular basis, not just the military members, but also the civilians. I know in my work, I often would collaborate with others within NATO. That's a common thing to do. I'm not saying that this is their expertise. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that nobody knows their work better than the workers. Nobody.
I agree that somebody's own work, nobody could possibly know it better than the person who performs it. And I always believed when I was a manager, you had to make sure that you knew that work as well as your subordinate, because you had to be able to, show them why you justify why you're there. You had to be able to understand what they were going through every day. So I get that. I just think that this is a little bit different, again, because it involves a profound knowledge that wouldn't be the day-to-day contact between armed forces. And I guess I would just ask the question. I completely understand, and I think we all acknowledge that there has to be a good look now at how outsourcing works within our federal government, and look at where, outside of surge capacity or outside of specialized services that would not be core services, we need to examine how much we outsource. But you would agree that there are some times, for example, for surge capacity or for specialized services that would be not everyday services, but would be inconsistent. You need it once a year, twice a year. that there are calls sometimes to have outsourcing, correct?
Certainly, there are occasions for outsourcing when it's going to require a specialized field that's not normally required and will not be ongoing required. Definitely, but it's nearly impossible to figure out what that is because the information that is shared with us on what that outsourcing entails is so limited. I mean, even when we were doing our 2020 report, I put in 47 ATIP requests. I'm still waiting on, or I put in 45 rather. I'm still waiting on 27. I've seen from the discussion around this table earlier this week about forms being fully redacted, pages being completely blank. This is an ongoing frustration. And frankly, I don't know that there is a lot of coordination in determining what the outsourcing is at National Defence. I'm reminded of the time when I was the Vice President for Alberta in the North, and I met with the Land Forces Western Area Commander at the time and asked him to provide me with a list of all the contracting out that he had underneath him. And he told me that he would have to stop his entire office of working for a full year and work only on that, and they still wouldn't be able to tell me how many contracts they have ongoing. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to necessarily agree on this.
Thank you, Madam Wigner.
I highlighted at this committee specifically with the minister the state of living quarters at CFB Kingston, specifically the Canadian Forces School of Communications and Electronics, where there aren't repairs being done to the living quarters for members who are stationed there, which is also the workplace for your members. It includes mold, it includes rodent infestations, water infiltration, inadequate bathroom facilities. With the government shoveling money out the door to high-priced consultants who are making more than both the uniformed members, certainly the non-commissioned members who are staying in those accommodations that I referenced, and your members who'd work in these facilities, does that have a negative impact on their morale? And if it does, in your opinion, do you believe that investments in the infrastructure there and the leadership of legacy members could both improve on culture challenges that exist, but also improve on the physical workspace that is depressing and, frankly, destroying the morale of D&D employees and uniformed members of the Canadian Forces?
So CFB Kingston is a really hard one. Around Christmas time, I received a phone call from the local president there who told me that one of our members was put in the hospital in a medically induced coma. And it was because they suspected that he had contracted Legionnaire's disease. And so shortly thereafter, it was confirmed, and we found Legionella in the workplace. And now that member is a double amputee as a result of this, for just trying to go to work. And so, is it a negative impact on their morale? You bet it is. It's shocking that it has come to this sort of level. Just absolutely shocking and disgraceful, to be quite blunt. Investments to improve the morale in the space? Certainly. However, we're getting another report. And this is what National Defence does. We get another report and a report after that and a report after that. At one point,
sorry, Madam
they
Wigner,
have to action the report.
Can you quickly wrap up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Quickly. Go ahead.
So at one point, they have to action these reports. They have to do something with it, not just continue to look for what fits the narrative or goes to their pre-designed destination. And so continuing to look for other ways of addressing this isn't the problem.
Okay,
The problem
thank
is
you.
actually doing something.
Chair, just if I may, I think that I can comfortably say that all members of the committee express their, their sorrow for your member, and that's terrible, and I'm so sorry that happened to them, and want to offer my sympathy and sympathy to you.
Thank you.